Hi, everybody. Dr. Misty here. Thanks so much for joining in today. I've missed you on my weekly lives and just getting back into it here in September. Today, we are going to be talking about adrenal fatigue. What is it? How do you know you have it? What's it from? How do you make it better? So, um, it's important to know that adrenal fatigue is not necessarily a diagnostic term. It is a dysfunction of the body. Okay. So if you went to your doctor and said, I think I have adrenal fatigue, they may either scratch their heads or they may say, like, oh, that sounds made up or something. Okay. The truth is that it is a term to describe a dysfunction of the body. Okay. It can also be synonymous with something called HPA dysregulation, which is hypopituitary adrenal dysregulation. This is part of the endocrine system. Okay, so you have multiple glands that are part of the pituitary gland, part of the pituitary gland, the thyroid, the adrenals, ovaries, testes. Um, and so it's important to understand that adrenal fatigue is not necessarily like, okay, your adrenal glands, which are two little glands that sit above your kidneys, they have multiple different roles. It's not necessarily to say that your adrenals are tired. Okay, so here's what happens with adrenal fatigue, okay, or HPA dysregulation. HPA dysregulation happens during points of chronic stress. Okay. And so this is really important because I feel like this is a time in history where so many people are under chronic stress. People are wondering, my kid is going back to school. Is my kid safe? People are wondering, how do I work from home and homeschool or do virtual with my child and juggle everything? People are wondering how they're going to make money. People are wondering what the future holds. There are multitudes of different stressors going on right now. Not only that, but if you are, I talk about trauma a lot. If you are a survivor, and especially of developmental trauma, meaning you've had abuse or trauma in your childhood, um, you have more, you're more apt for adrenal fatigue because of your wiring to produce stress hormones and keep your body on alert. Okay. So adrenal fatigue is really a bodily dysfunction. I do this every time I have a live. My glasses get glare. Um, so just know that, okay? So your body has your endocrine system, your hormones, hormone regulation. Adrenals, your adrenal glands are part of that. Your adrenals have a job that basically has, there's two different layers to your adrenal glands. One of the layers produces stress hormones. The other part of the layers helps with water regulation in your kidneys. Okay. So there's a couple different types of hormone production that happen in your adrenal glands. So adrenal fatigue is essentially, or HPA axis dysfunction. Just to kind of dull it down, basically there's like a circuit loop that runs in your body with this system. Okay, so if we were to think of like a racetrack, okay, and you were playing tag inside of um, your glands or inside this system, your body is kind of playing tag with your hormones. So if stress happens, right? So you get a regulation of your pituitary gland secretes hormones that secrete, um, cortisol, and then it also, okay, the cortisol will increase your heart rate, increase your blood sugar, kind of prepare you for fight or flight. Okay, and so in that, the HPA, hypopituitary adrenal axis, is kind of like you play tag. When you notice, your body systems notice that your cortisol levels are lower, then essentially your body might put out more if you're continually stressed. If your body has a difficult time continually putting out cortisol, okay, because cortisol is made from a hormone called pregnenolone. So pregnenolone is also utilized by are sex hormones. Okay. So, and that's the basis of cholesterol. So, without getting into all this nitty gritty stuff, um, having HPA dysfunction can absolutely wreak havoc on your hormones, on your mood. It's not just feeling fatigue. Okay. So, how do you know if your body is feeling, if you have some sort of adrenal fatigue? So, there's a couple different phases of this. Typically, if you've had chronic stress, um, not lifetime or years, but say since COVID, you might be in phase one. Okay, so there's different phases. So phase one, you are everything is hyper reactive. You might even notice that you're like, okay, I'm starting to like I'm getting jittery. You're like kind of wired and tired. I'm jittery. I have trouble falling asleep. I'm having insomnia. I'm getting some of like the 2 o'clock crashes, things like that. Okay. Phase two is like, okay, I'm jittery, but I'm also like, oof, mornings are tough. Mornings are getting real tough. Oh, I started getting cravings for sugar and salt, things like that. You might notice you're getting more of a 2 o'clock crash. You might notice that you're having more insomnia. You might notice that even if you're female, your menstruation or your cycle is becoming off. Okay, because that's why the cortisol will steal from the production of progesterone, the estrogen pathways, androgens. Okay, so cortisol will steal that. It will shunt it and from making. So you might have like an estrogen deficiency or a progesterone deficiency. Okay. And so in your cycle, that's really, really important. Um, so you might feel those types of symptoms. Typically, if you're in phase two, your body's starting to not react as much to the signaling. It's taking more signaling to get more cortisol to be produced in your body, right? And again, it's being taken from that pregnenolone. Okay, so you're seeing a hormone shift at this point. You may even notice some moodiness there. Okay, when you get to stage three and you're like really, really exhausted. So say that you are somebody who is a survivor. Okay, and so you've been kind of like stressed out a lot. You might have PTSD. Um, you might already have some of those like easily startled things like that. Then you add more stress on top of it. Say you're having more lifestyle stress change now because of COVID. So now your body is consistently being pinged to produce cortisol. Your body goes into this state where it can't sustain continually being pinged for cortisol. So it's kind of synonymous if you think about it, like diabetes is with insulin and pancreas, right? In somewhat of a way. But basically, like the supply and demand, the demand is going up, 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 and the supply is going down, 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 right? So your body at that point, when you are really low, in more of the exhaustion phase, your body is tired. You're tired all the time, constant need for coffee, chronic pain because you can't, cortisol actually helps moderate inflammation. So if you're not able to produce cortisol as much or, um, you know, have that being able to regulate inflammation as well, your immunity is going to start going down as well. Okay. So you're going to start feeling really fatigued. You might have chronic pain. You might have really severe cravings for sugar or salt at that point. Your exhaustion all the time, maybe lapses in cycle. Um, so there's different levels there, but it's important to understand what's happening with your symptoms in your body. Okay. Now, stress, it really affects, stress not only sends off cortisol, it also activates there's a part of your nervous system that is really meant for um, some sort of threat. Okay. So chronic stress in 2020, um, is so different than what our stressors were, hundreds and thousands of years ago, right? Typically, um, if you had a stressor, it was more of a predatory threat years ago, right? So this enables you, your body innately is enabled to raise your blood pressure, raise your heart rate, raise your blood sugar because your body is preparing to either fight or flight. Okay. And so this is why it's so dangerous for, um, chronic adrenal issues because your body is not meant to live in that state. Your body is not meant to live in this chronically perpetuated state. And so when you are in a chronic state, you're also in a chronic state of your sympathetic nervous system, okay, being on, right? So things that slow down when your sympathetic nervous system is on are actually your digestion, your nutrient absorption. You actually get less of your blood flow goes to your organs and more of your blood flow goes towards your extremities for the fight or flight. Okay. Then on top of that, just physiologically talking about what's happening to your body during these chronic states of stress, right? And so, like, you're mobilizing fats, right? You're mobilizing sugars. The sugar's getting stored as fat. This is why people with this type of issue gain weight easier because you're mobilizing sugars because of the cortisol, and it's getting stored as abdominal visceral fat, which leads to a higher level of chronic disease. Okay. So adrenal fatigue from chronic stress is kind of a catalyst to a multitude of other types of disease. Typically, you're going to see people with autoimmunity type issues, thyroid dysfunction, things like this. Um, you know, if somebody has adrenal fatigue. So it's important to understand what's happening in your body as well as what it feels like, right? So you might be at a different phase, or you may have been healing and you've gone up and down, right? Um, so how can you help yourself if you are somebody in this uh, type of position, especially if you are somebody um, who is having a lot more of stress during COVID with their job, with a loss, um, with life changes, or and this is the sad part about this pandemic and what's happening. People, the levels of child abuse and domestic violence are going way up. Okay. So this is also a catalyst of bringing out a lot of raw emotions in people. So a lot of people are feeling like it's more like out of control. You're feeling out of control. You might be trapped in a situation where you are literally being quarantined or being stuck in a position with an abuser or a child in this state. So this is where that becomes a really big issue is that chronic states of stress, which is something that is absolutely experienced in those types of situations. Um, Chronic states of stress just wreak havoc on your body and your physiology. Okay. So if you are one of those people who are stuck in that situation, I absolutely believe in you. And I think that the most important thing is to create safety for yourself. So, and bring down these types of responses. So, if you are somebody who's not in that situation, but you're just chronically stressed and you're burnt out and you're multitudes of juggling and, you have 5 kids, you're a mother, you might be a mother stuck in a domestic violence situation with working and everything. You might be, um, a father. You might be somebody who's just having way too many stressors on their back. Okay. Um, and just as a side note, again, I really feel like this is this whole situation, because of such a worldly change and the lack of our control, this is bringing out a lot more trauma responses in people and chronic stress. So it's really important. I feel like this is really important to address because it's not something that's typically addressed within the medical model. Right. So again, it's adrenal fatigue is a dysfunction, right? As we mentioned earlier, it's not necessarily a diagnosis as you would present to a medical doctor with and get a pill. Okay. So this really has to be a change coming from you within your diet and mindset. Okay. Um, so the good news is that if you this is can be reversible. Okay. One of the biggest things is understanding where the feelings of chronic stress are coming from, as well as understanding that you have you're having a response to the stress. So not only is there a stressor, but the stressor is creating stress within you or perceived stress within you. Okay. So it's important to understand that we, as much as we can, do have control over the stress response. Okay. So I'm empowering you right now that it's possible for you to take a deep breath, to do some grounding and things like that to bring that down. So here's a couple things that really help with that. Some things that you can do just momentarily. So, not in the long term, but if you notice yourself starting down this path, this trend, you might be somebody in adrenal fatigue phase one, right? You might be like kind of like that wired and tired person where you're like, oh my God, I had like my third cup of coffee and I'm bouncing off the wall, but I still feel like I need coffee. And, you're just kind of that having those types of symptoms. And then you might be somebody who's like, oh my God, I cannot get my butt out of bed. Oh my God, where's my coffee at 2 o'clock or my Starbucks or whatever, right? Like don't take away my coffee. I gotta have, sugar and all that stuff. Um, and then you might be the person who's completely flat out, who's like, I don't even know how I'm gonna get through today. Like I don't even know how I'm going to take care of myself and my kids at this point because I feel like a sack of bricks that I'm like, oh. So if any of those are you, um, what we need to do is try to get you to um, awaken to your stressors. First step is the awareness of the stressors. Okay. How, when, why, when are you getting this response? Start to notice, be in your body more. Okay. Start to notice where your stressors are. Are you having stress when you're around the kids when they do certain things? Are you having stress with your job? Are you having stress with your boss? Are you having stress with your spouse? Are you having stress with sleeping? Are you having stress because of your traumas coming up? Those are all important because the more awareness that you can have, the more in your body and understanding of your body, where you're feeling things you are, the more that you can gain control over the situation. Okay. So, it's important to know there's grounding techniques. Okay. So when that stress happens, we don't want to go off into oblivion and have the stress you might get triggered. Again, if you have PTSD or not, you might get triggered and then your mind starts going blah, 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 and then your mind starts telling you all this like stuff that's going to happen and your anxiety and your worry and this and that, and you go off like down a black hole, right, of stress and anxiety. All right, give me a like if you've been somebody who's been down that black hole. I've been down there many times. Okay. I lived down that for a long time. Okay. So it's important to catch yourself during that spiral. Okay. And so just doing some immediate grounding. This is good for PTSD and it's good for anybody who just has the adrenal issues and wants to bring down that sympathetic nervous system response. So taking a deep breath in and literally counting backwards from 5. Okay. So sometimes I'll do things like tap my fingers. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. You can do something. Sometimes I use essential oils. My favorite essential oil is Melissa. And if you guys want to use any of those or need any supplements, That's right on my website at www.newhorizonchiro.com. I have my essential oils in store on there that you guys can go on and find dispensaries and oils, dispensary supplements and oils to help you out during this time. So I use Melissa because it activates your senses. So grounding is really great because it activates using your senses. So it literally isn't just about like, okay, this is calming, yay, lavender is nice. No, it's literally activating certain neurology in your brain and bringing down that sympathetic nervous system response and reducing the cortisol levels. That's really important. Okay. So grounding, you want to do breathing, breath work. You can also do tapping. So there's something called EFT tapping. And this is really, really great. Um, if you were, say, if you had a stress response and you're having like a massive amount of anxiety, you have a headache, your heart's pounding, you can do tapping at some of the stress points. So here, okay, if you're feeling it there, especially here. So even though I am feeling stressed and whatever you're feeling, like literally say it. Even though I am feeling stressed, my chest is tight, I'm feeling my heart racing, I totally and completely accept myself. So that is tapping. Okay. And so there's a neurological response that goes with that. So saying that out loud 5 times can be really powerful. The other thing is grounding with nature. So if you have time and you are somebody who, you know, likes to exercise, I would highly recommend getting out, getting near water, getting near a waterfall. Waterfalls are really, really great. Negative ions, very good for grounding effects and energy and electromagnetic fields. The other one is literally putting your feet in sand or grass. Okay, so these are just especially your bare feet. So if you have bare feet, putting like the balls of your feet on nature is really good for grounding because there's actually an acupressure or acupuncture point there that helps with bringing down stress. Okay. Another thing that you can do is you can also utilize supplementation. Okay. So if you are somebody who feels like try to control this, but this is going off all the time, what you can do is try to utilize something. There's a great supplement I call that's called Zen. It is a combination between GABA, which is a inhibitory neurotransmitter in our brain. It helps to bring down the excitement of the nerves. So GABA, um, and um, there's an amino acid that helps. It's L-theanine. Okay, so if there's a supplement, you can look onto the dispensary as well. It's called Zen. It's really, really, really great for anxiety. The other thing is you can utilize Melissa as well. Melissa, the essential oil works very, very, very fast. Okay. So what I usually use for people who are more prone to panic attacks with adrenal fatigue, I use more liposomal types of supplements. So typically I like to use ones that have GABA and L-theanine liposomal, like under the tongue, or Melissa, which is essential oil. It gets it gets absorbed and into the bloodstream and central nervous system within like 5 minutes. So it's really, really, really powerful. Okay. Um, so the other thing that you can do if you start noticing that you're like, okay, I'm one of those people who's at the extreme end of adrenal fatigue. So I'm in like the exhaustion phase. We're talking about I'm tired all the time. I can't even handle my life anymore because I am so stressed out. Those things are going to help, but we also need to regulate um and help with your adrenal response. Okay. So again, I have to say, I just have to give this disclaimer because this is for informational purposes only. I can't prescribe this over, virtually. If you are somebody who is feels like they have adrenal fatigue, and wants more information on what might be the best for them, I do virtual consultations. So again, you can go ahead and go to that website. You can book a virtual consult right online, and I can help you with your case. And so the people who are feeling like a high level of exhaustion, okay, there's usually a multi-layered effect. So first of all, getting inflammation under control is part of it. So doing things like turmeric, reducing sugar, reducing red meats, reducing things high in omega-3 fatty acids like chips, things like that, fries, anything trans fats, fried foods. Okay. Um, you want to really avoid having as much sugar as possible, even though you're craving it. Okay. So having a diet high in fiber and fats is going to be really helpful. And maybe even eating more often. So a little less, like every 3 hours. Okay. It's important when you are waking up with adrenal fatigue. There's actually there's supplementations. That my favorite one is adrenatone. It helps to break down cortisol slower, so it helps to keep your cortisol levels up, so your body isn't doing that signaling, right? You want to keep it to bring down the signaling as much as possible, so your adrenals aren't getting burnt out. Okay. So, adrenatone has a multitude of different herbs in it to help with that slowness of the cortisol breakdown. Your cortisol should be at its highest in the morning. So that's why people feel so tired, is that there's this curve that happens with your adrenals. It's basically, it should be high in the morning, like peak like 7 to 9, and then it should slowly go down at night and be the lowest at night. So people with adrenal fatigue phase 2, you're going to notice it kind of like this mountain effect. Okay. Phase 3 is kind of like a flat line. So it's important to understand where you're at. If you want more information and just like you're not sure where you're at, what I typically do is a two different types of tests. I do something called the Dutch test, which is a complete hormone and cortisol panel to really understand what your body is doing and the rhythms of your cortisol. Um, and I also do a saliva test for cortisol. The Dutch test is very, very, very reliable. It's great to see what it's doing with hormones too and how that is contributing to fatigue as well. There are so many different contributors to fatigue, but typically in that stage 3, we're getting more layered and layered and layered at that point, because it's affecting so many other parts of your body. It's affecting your thyroid, it's affecting your immunity, your inflammation, your ability to fight off infections. And at that point, you could be somebody who has a multitude of viral infections, and you have mitochondrial dysfunction, which means that your cells are not producing the energy and shunting the energy to you to burn throughout the day. They're shunting it for infections to be fought. So, but just to give you a little tidbit on, I know that was a big tidbit on adrenal fatigue and some of the different phases, and how you can help yourself. um, I hope you found that helpful. If you did, please comment below. Let me know how I can help. Um, in specifics, if you want more specifics, please book a consult. I work a couple days a week, and it's for patients who are very serious about their health and wanting to know more on how they can move forward with functional medicine testing, as well as answers for their health and take charge of their health. So please know that I don't always work with every case after the first initial consult. It depends on what the patient is wanting to do, what their goals are. It's kind of an initial consult to figure out and gain direction and insight into your health. It's a really, really powerful consult. I charge $350 for my initial consults. They're typically between 60 to 90 minutes. So just throwing that out there for you. If you want the extra help, I am here for you. and I'd be happy to discuss any other issues further or with your health. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to try and get on next week as well to do my weekly wellness updates. Okay, thanks so much, everybody. Have a good day.